Web3 koji je zasnovan na blockchainu tiho gradi temelje za novu generaciju interneta, onu u kojoj korisnici imaju više kontrole, pa svakako barem što se tiče sigurnosti i izbora. Mi ćemo danas razgovarati s 𝗪𝗵𝘁 koji je direktor Cosmoverse, kako bismo na samom početku pokušali razjasniti što sve to skupa znači za korisnike. Michael, welcome to 𝗪𝗵. To begin with, what does the Web3 means for the general picture, for the web to become more decentralized? Why does it matter?
Yeah, dobro jutro, first of all. Thank you so much for having me.
Dobro jutro.
I think the true innovation that Bitcoin really invented in 2009 is really that for the first time in history, we were separating money from state. We're truly building a decentralized, sovereign, and independent financial system. And I think that is a true innovation, right? Of course, everyone is very excited when Bitcoin goes up, including myself. It's also a matter of, the price, the market cap. That is one part, the whole speculation around the price. But the true innovation really is Bitcoin has cracked the code about building a decentralized database that can really be owned and really empowers the people.
And also there is a growing buzz around combining artificial intelligence with blockchain. How could that actually impact both daily lives and doing business?
Yeah, I think there was the first cycle of, the merge between blockchain, Web3 and AI in 2017. And I think back then it was just, two buzzwords colliding. Now we're actually seeing real applications, the 𝗪𝗪𝗿𝗀s of the world that have really onboarded billions of users in no time, or at least hundreds of millions. But if you now apply what I just said about Bitcoin, the same logic to every other industry, whether that's mobility, whether that's supply chain, logistics, fintech, right? If you apply that same principle about empowering the people, building a decentralized database, then AI is actually one of the most important ones, right? Because we don't want to build self-sustaining systems that eventually are smarter than humans, that are running on centralized servers, which could be a centralized point of failure at some point. So the whole philosophy of the crypto movement, the Web3 movement, at least from the early origins, is really about building a system that is decentralized, that is open, that is inclusive, that is global, and that will also affect AI. Because in the end of the day, AI applications are also in need of underlying databases, and that's where Web3 and blockchain comes in.
But Michael, also building systems where things can talk to each other. What does it mean when different digital systems can talk to each other? Why is that important, let's say, for users of apps, banks, or social platforms?
So that really is one of the core innovations that is coming from the Cosmos ecosystem, this whole idea around interoperability, right? If we speak about interoperability, connectivity within Web3, there are a few early ideas, and the Cosmos ecosystem, which is what I'm obviously the biggest fan of, at least from the underlying technology, about building or replicating the existing internet, the 𝗪𝗪𝗿𝗀 standard, replicating that for the Web3 world. Because in the end of the day, if you are building an application that has real users, that has real revenue, you don't want it to be isolated, right? You want it to be integrated, merged into existing rails, and that can be traditional rails, but also that can be native Web3 rails. And I think interoperability, if you look at the internet today, right? If we open a website, if we open an application on our phone, it's all compatible to each other. So I think without interconnectivity, it wouldn't be possible to build a system that, gets hundreds of millions, eventually multiple billions of people to speak to each other. So interoperability really is the core. So what Cosmos brings to the table is really replicating this TCP/IP standard or IBAN standard, right, from the banking sector for the crypto world.
And we are also seeing more like traditional institutions, like banks, for example, to enter this Web3 space. We also saw like big investment banks to enter in the field of Bitcoin. What does all of that mean for trust and safety online?
it surely brings a lot of credibility to the space. I think January 2024 was really a turning point, I would say, because that's when the Bitcoin ETFs were approved in the United States, right? I think since then you have really seen not only a massive inflow in liquidity through the ETFs, but also now you're seeing other jurisdictions here in Europe. I'm originally from Germany. I'm in Croatia right now. Things are usually a bit more conservative, a little bit slower. But you see Asia, the Middle East, Dubai, the UAE, they're really, really advancing rapidly to not only embrace it, but to actually also use it themselves. So we're going to see national currencies running on blockchain, central bank digital currencies. We're going to see public sectors also affected by this innovation, right? So it's not only about like building the liquidity rails, but it's also about building actual applications, actual new systems that will affect people's lives. And I think at the same time, I feel like we're right now in a transition phase that has started last year. It will probably take another couple of years because everything that I mentioned earlier about, building decentralized databases, about interoperability, scalability, I haven't mentioned yet. Those are all technical challenges that the blockchain developer community is still figuring out, right? Things break along the way. Things are battle tested along the way. It's just a very volatile early stage industry. But I think last year we have seen a turning point, institutions joining, which is also the theme of our conference this year, right? Cosmoverse in the Split Croatia, we're theming the conference policy meets protocol. And a couple of years ago, that was, not even on the table. Like that was not even interesting out there. So yeah, we're definitely witnessing a whole new paradigm of the industry.
Yeah, but Michael, you say maybe we will need a few more years ahead. But the question is whether those who invest money will have patience to see the results, because maybe you can give some real world examples of how can technologies like blockchain help solve problems in areas like, let's say, transportation, energy, healthcare.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the core, right? I think investing is one thing. I've personally invested over the past 8 years since I got into this industry. I have done every single mistake that you can do out there, from leaving my investments on exchanges that didn't exist anymore to losing my private keys. So I did a lot of mistakes. I think patience is really the keyword if you are in this industry, because it is really stress testing your nerves as well. But at the same time now, I believe that stablecoins are really the first real world application that we're seeing that is also bridging the traditional world with the Web3 world. And I think liquidity really is the first kind of big use case. We are seeing already large organizations like IBM, like Revolut, right, that are also integrating that in their industries or in trading or in the fintech applications. But I think on the one hand, we still need to be patient about the technology actually being ready to handle the volumes, to handle everything. On the other hand, we also need to have kind of sound and clear regulatory frameworks that are in play, right? Because if you're building an application that affects transportation or logistics, then you need to also ensure that you're fully compliant, right? And that's where the MiCA Act comes in, that is now here more and more being licensed in Europe, the Genius Act in the US. So I think we're still in this phase, but eventually my personal conviction or hope, of course, as a Web3 native, entrepreneur, is that a lot of the industries will move on chain, from capital markets to simple tracking systems, logistics, right? Everything needs to be on chain. That's my personal conviction. And that's what I'm working on every day.
And what are the signs that Web3 is moving beyond, I would say, not only like tech enthusiasts and developers, but also moving beyond cryptocurrency and starting to reach like other businesses, other sectors, and everyday users?
Yeah, so in my personal Web3 career, I would say when I started around 7, 8 years ago, it was still a very niche, very developer heavy kind of industry. Now you're seeing specifically over the past 2, 3 years, but specifically in 2025, you're seeing a lot of public dialogues between the public sector at public events like Cosmoverse, and there's many other great events happening all over the world where regional banks, institutions are really joining the conversation. They want to engage with Web3 builders, innovators. They want to ask, like, how are you building this? What's the point of the technology that you're deploying, that you're building? On the other hand, we're also now seeing a huge trend in M&As, right? I think a lot of acquisitions from large existing institutions. So that is happening. At the same time, also even institutions launching their own Web3 products, like Robinhood, for example, right? That's a perfect one. They're building a blockchain, right? And eventually a lot of these organizations will build their blockchains. And if you would have told me 5 years ago that, Robinhood is going to launch an L2 on Arbitrum, I would say, like, that there's no way. I mean, I wouldn't believe it. So, and this is only within 5 years, right? Now imagine the next 5 years, like things scale, things grow even faster through what we called earlier, vibe coding, AI, artificial intelligence, accelerates all these developments. So yeah, it's exciting times, I would say.
Great. Thank you very much. We do appreciate this conversation.
Thank you too. It was a pleasure.